Tim Walz, who enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. And I'm not aware of any military service that J.D. Vance has ever served. So let's just make the comparison there. And what happened in the tragedy of the killing of George Floyd and then the unrest. Yeah, okay, pardon me for that. But to go after somebody's record of service, to me, is just ridiculous.
But we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states. And we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Good evening, Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many pleasures to be here tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As you just saw, they are just going to try and spin every way they possibly can to save Kamala Harris's VP pick from the assault that has taken place by thousands of military veterans that are stepping up and saying, this is BS. The man is committed stolen valor at a minimum. Tonight's show is going to be just about this one individual, Tim Walz. And I'm going to expose all the factual things about this guy that you need to know. Everybody, regardless of your political party. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, it doesn't matter. If you're voting in November, you need to know about the VP pick and a little more about his background, because he is one heartbeat away from becoming the president of the United States in the event that Harris wins. And boy, would that be a sad day for this country. But it is important, I believe, that somebody running for president needs to have somebody who's honest, truthful, and ready to do the right things for America in the event that something happens to the president. Well, as you just heard in the opening of tonight's show, the top surrogate for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's 2024 campaign, Democrat Senator Tina Smith, made it known on CNN that she is not happy with Republicans, and especially with J.D. Vance, for attacking Tim Walz for stolen valor. She said, as you just heard, that to her knowledge, J.D. Vance never served in the military. And furthermore, she said to go after someone's military record of service is just ridiculous. Well, madam, allow me as a U.S. Army combat veteran to educate your dumbass. J.D. Vance did serve in the United States military. In fact, he was a Marine. And he also served 6 months in Iraq, where J.D. Vance did not. I'm sorry, where Tim Walz did not. He is also the first Marine Corps veteran to be nominated for Vice President of the United States. It always amazes me how Democrats and liberals don't do their homework before opening their pie hole. So now that you have been corrected, let's discuss how you don't think J.D. Vance or Republicans have the right to go after someone's military record, and to do so, according to you, madam, is ridiculous. First, military veterans have a responsibility to call out stolen valor, as does anyone else who could prove it if you're an American. Tim Walz has committed stolen valor in our minds. And at the very least, He's embellished his military service, and that is wrong. It doesn't matter if you're calling out a veteran, a doctor, a school teacher, pick a profession. If you lied about it, it's wrong, period, and you should be ready for the consequences of your action. Now, two things I want to share with you right off the top here. What's going to be covered in tonight's show is very important that it gets out there to the voters. So after tonight's show is over with and it's just a regular video, please share this video on all of your social media sites. If the voters don't have the factual information, then they can't make decent, true, trustful, reliable, and choices that will do good things for this country. If they go on just what the left is spinning, they will go into this blinded, and we can't allow that to happen. The other thing I'd like to say is for the liberals and Democrats out there that like to say that I just blow smoke and I'm full of shit, I beg you to fact check tonight's show. Please. I've dug deep into this crap, which I'm going to share with you. Tim Walz served in the Minnesota Army National Guard. That is honorable. That should be enough. He did not serve in combat. But even that is honorable. It does not matter if you are a 5-time combat deployed Navy SEAL or an Army cook that never deployed overseas. The simple fact that you took the oath and served honorably is all that matters. And that should be enough for you to be proud of. But that's not the case with Tim Walz. He lied and said he was a command sergeant major and retired as a command sergeant major. He was not. His highest rank that he achieved academic-wise was master sergeant. He was, however, conditionally awarded command sergeant major rank on the conditions of graduating the command sergeant major academy. He did not graduate from that academy. Not because he could not pass the course. Of course, we don't know because he never finished it, but because he quit. Why did he quit? He quit because while at the academy, his unit received deployment orders to Iraq. He told his command that he wanted to run for Congress and therefore wanted out of his contract. The Army National Guard allowed him to do that. He also is on record lying about serving in combat. While giving a speech about AR-15s, which you just saw at the beginning of tonight's show, he said, "No one in America needs to have the type of weapons that I had in combat." Again, a lie. He never served in combat. He never served in Iraq. Two things come to mind when I think about him quitting the Sergeant Major's Academy. Number one, you did not know you wanted to run for Congress before going to the Command Sergeant Major Academy? Seriously? You wasted the taxpayers' money to go to the academy? And then when you find out that your unit is getting activated to go to Iraq, you quit? You know, and the left is trying to spin this bullshit about how the orders didn't come down for Iraq until after he quit. Well, that's true. The actual order didn't come down until afterwards. But he knew that was coming because he was a high-ranking NCO in the Minnesota National Guard. So he knew what was happening. He knew about it while he was in the academy, that the unit was going to be activated. And he wanted out of there before that order was released. And he pulled it off. And the next thing that I'd like to know, Tim, it just so happens that while you're in the academy, you make the decision to run for Congress, but only after your unit gets deployment orders to Iraq? I'm sorry, but us Iraq combat veterans are not buying it. And continuing to serve in the Army, National Guard, or any National Guard and run for Congress, guess what? Drum roll, is allowed. You don't have to drop out. You know how many members of Congress are serving in the National Guard and that ran for Congress while in the National Guard? A bunch. Look it up. So shame on your command leadership in the Minnesota National Guard for allowing you to quit. Bottom line, it's okay to call someone out on their military record if you know 100% that they lied about their service. But it is not okay to make up shit about someone's service. For instance, there are liberal idiots all the time accusing me of never serving in combat, accusing me of only serving as a mechanic and never deployed, claiming I was dishonorably discharged, making fun of my injuries from service. Yet they're too stupid to realize that my military service is an open book for anyone to fact check. Between my website, douglasducote.com, and social media sites, Facebook, for instance, Twitter, Instagram, anyone can see pictures of me serving in not just one, but 4 combat deployments, serving as a flight engineer on a CH-47 Chinook helicopter, my military awards, my induction into the Veterans Hall of Honor, my DD-214s and my NGB-22s, my NCO evaluations, my aircrew evaluations as a flight engineer. And the only thing redacted is my social security number. Yet, I'm always accused by these wingnuts of having stolen valor. And that's the difference between what's right and what's wrong. Making up shit about a veteran is wrong. Telling the truth is not only right, but it's noble. J.D. Vance calling out Tim Walz and veterans that are coming together by the thousands as I speak to call out Tim Walz is noble and just. Coming to Tim Walz's defense was Biden-Harris Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who posted on X, Walz served honorably and well, and accused the GOP ticket of attacking Walz to avoid discussing policy issues. I'll stop right there for that one. Keep in mind, that's coming from a freak that does not know crap about policies, issues, or the United States military. Then responding to Mr. Buttigieg's X post was never Trumper Meghan McCain. She, by the way, can't stand anything about Trump or J.D. Vance. But even she tweeted in response, Respectfully, there are a lot of veterans and active military people in my life who are far from Trump supporters who are very upset about what Walz has misrepresented. This isn't strategic. It's at best confusing and at worst stolen valor. That's from Meghan McCain. Then joining Pete Buttlicker were a few Democrat never-Trumper veterans slamming J.D. Vance and anyone daring to challenge Tim Walz's military service by questioning his resume and suggesting that he intentionally left before his unit got deployment to Iraq. Retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, Hertling, a former commander of American ground forces in Europe, tweeted, "It's unbecoming, and it's unprofessional for especially veterans to openly disparage anyone who has served in uniform. I'm personally very thankful for all who have worn the cloth of our country for any amount of time and who have served in our professional force." Let's be clear. J.D. Vance, you served honorably, including 6 months in combat. Tim Walz retired after 24 years and achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major. Excuse me, General Hertling. Pay close attention, please. Do your homework before opening your mouth and looking like a fool. He did not achieve the rank of Command Sergeant Major. That rank was conditional only, and for a very short period of time. Conditional that he completed the Sergeant Major Academy, which he did not because he dropped out and quit. Never-Trumper Democrat veteran, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, tweeted, "I do not think you want to compare service records, J.D. Vance." Well, of course he does, sir. So do I. So does every honorable military veteran. That's the point. Stolen valor is wrong. Fact. Tim Walz served 24 years in the Army National Guard. That's honorable enough. He should have left it at that. His only deployments were to the Arctic Circle. Imagine it was pretty damn cold there. And Italy. Neither of which are combat zones. Now, his deployment to Italy was to support Operation Enduring Freedom, which was centered in Afghanistan as part of the war on terror. But Tim Walz himself was never deployed to Afghanistan or any combat zone. But a video tweeted by the Harris campaign, which I showed you at the beginning of tonight's show, shows Governor Tim Walz telling an audience that he carried guns in war while advocating for gun reform. Quote, "We can research the impacts of gun violence. We can make sure those weapons of war that I carried in war are only carried in war," end quote. Again, Tim Walz never served a day in combat. As for his lying about his rank and claiming he retired as a Command Sergeant Major, the Minnesota Army National Guard released a statement that said, Tim Walz did not retire as a Command Sergeant Major because he did not complete additional coursework at the U.S. Army Sergeant Major's Academy. Walz would have had to serve that particular role for 3 years to retire under that rank officially, but he did not achieve that rank because he dropped out of the academy. Now, today, after all of us are taking to social media to expose the fraud that Tim Walz is, the Harris campaign quietly altered its bio of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on its campaign website, making a change to a reference to his military service aimed at ongoing scrutiny of the 2024 Democrat vice president nominee's military credentials. Walz's bio initially said he was a retired command sergeant major. Today, it says, after the update, he served as a command sergeant major. He did not. He was conditionally, they still can't get this shit right. He was conditionally given the rank of command sergeant major, conditional on graduating the academy, which he dropped out of. There is a, let me see if I can find it real quick here, because it's fairly interesting, and I think it'd be nice for me to read to you, because it shows a little bit about how the National Guard, those in leadership positions, were viewing this guy and how they personally feel about what he said and what he's done. The National Guard of Minnesota want you to know, we retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning Tim Walz's military service record. The truth about Tim Walz. The bottom line is all of this gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit. He failed to complete the United States Sergeant Major Academy. He failed to serve for 2 years following completion of the academy, which he dropped out of. He failed to serve 2 years after the conditional promotion to command sergeant major. He failed to fulfill the full 6 years of the enlistment he signed on September 18th, 2001. He failed his country. He failed his state. He failed the Minnesota Army National Guard, the 1st of the 125th Field Artillery Battalion, and his fellow soldiers. And he failed to lead by example. How shameful. Signed, Thomas Burans, Command Sergeant Major, and Paul Herr, Command Sergeant Major. Well, there you go. From Sergeant Majors from the unit. So let's talk about a few more things about this wonderful pick of Kamala Harris. As Tim Walz was governor of Minnesota, the state saw an alarming crime wave between 2018 that surged through 2021, dipping slightly in 2022, according to primary state data released this year. Meanwhile, Walz has had mixed responses to law enforcement in his state, while he did not fully endorse the defund the police movement that began in 2020. He did something just as worse. He expressed sympathy for rioters who ravaged Minneapolis, destroying small businesses and burning down dozens of buildings in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder. His reputation on crime has largely been dominated in the public eye by his hesitant response to the riots, which proved to have a devastating impact on the most populous city in the state. When Harris revealed she had chosen Walz, Republicans jumped on the chance to remind the public of the mayhem that happened in Minneapolis in 2020. Former President Donald Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, said Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis. In his debut speech as Harris's running mate, Walz deflected on his record of crime and sought to turn the spotlight on Trump's felony convictions. Make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump, Walz said at a rally this past Tuesday in Philadelphia with Harris. And that's not even counting the crimes that he committed. During his governorship, Walz's harshest crime-related criticism has been that he failed to respond in a timely manner to destructive riots that wreaked havoc across Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other cities after police officer Derek Chauvin was captured on video kneeling on George Floyd's neck. We all watched it unfold on our television sets, burning to the ground. A tense 3 days of shocking displays of arson, vandalism, violence, murder, and looting, all in the name of racial justice, passed before Walz activated the National Guard to respond. 3 days of hell. A Joint Committee report from the Minnesota Senate found that Walz waited 18 hours after the Minneapolis mayor begged him to send in the National Guard. Governor Walz had the ability and duty to use force and law enforcement to stop criminal violence, but he did not, the report states. And a side note to show you how he feels about this and why he didn't do all this, and you can see it, it's all over social media, is his wife talking about how it was almost like she was proud of the rioters. She said that they were burning tires in downtown, so she opened the windows in the house and left them open so she could smell the burning tires to remind her of the poor Black people in the streets and what they were up against through the history of America and slavery and police brutality. It was her way of punishing herself to smell those burning tires. That's just sick. They added that Walz was not willing to do what was necessary to stop the rioting right away because he was having a philosophical debate about whether to use force should be used to stop violence or not. During the critical 18 hours in which Walz remained in the state of indecision, many buildings went up in flames, including a police precinct, as you may remember. They burnt a police department to the ground, torched police cars, attacked police officers with rocks and firebomb bottles. Walz later described the destruction as the manifestation of generational pain. During a press conference, the rioters inflicted damage on roughly 1,500 buildings in urban regions of Minnesota during the few days, and dozens were burned completely to the ground by these arsonists. Copycat riots quickly cropped up in other parts of the country. One controversy that Harris has long taken heat for in her decision in 2020 to evaluate the Minnesota Freedom Fund was to help it and ask people to donate to it. It's a group that opposes cash bail and bailed out suspects regardless of the crime they were accused of committing. The group posted bail in 2020 for defendants accused of burning down the freaking city, and even those accused of sexual assault, where one guy assaulted an 8-year-old girl in a stabbing incident, while Harris called for donations for the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Walz in 2019 appointed its then executive director, Tanya Hansi, to the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission. The commission is a 13-member panel that maintains a sentencing framework for judges in the state to refer to when penalizing criminals. In terms of legislation after the riots, Walz worked with a divided state government to pass police reform bill that placed some restrictions on police officers. The bill's reception was tepid across the political spectrum, according to Courthouse News. Last year, Tim Walz signed a Democratic-led bill that extended voting rights to tens of thousands of felons. Among the statements Trump made after Harris picked him was a post on social media that simply said in all caps, "Thank you." Vance, the GOP vice president nominee, called Harris and Walz a tag team for the reactions of the riots. They make an interesting tag team because, of course, Tim Walz allowed rioters to burn down Minneapolis in the summer of 22. And then the few that got caught, Kamala Harris bailed them out of jail, Vance said. Mike Davis, founder of the Article 3 Project, told the Washington Examiner he viewed Walz as a radical liberal disguising as a Midwestern who is unfit to be vice president of the United States. At the same time that Kamala Harris was fundraising for Minnesota Freedom Fund and contributing to the release of violent criminals, Governor Walz was enabling these same criminals to commit more violent offenses, Davis said. The Walz-Harris administration is an open invitation for 4 more years of lawlessness, riots, and crime across America. Moving on. In a July 23rd interview on MSNBC, Tim Walz predicted that Harris would win older white voters because she was talking about substance, including schools, jobs, and environmental policies. This guy's a fucking comedian. Then said, referring to Republicans and conservatives, "These are weird people on the other side. They want to take books away." Meaning we want to take books away in libraries in kindergarten through 12th grade that are porn related. They want to be in your exam room, meaning abortion rights and kids having sex reassignment surgeries. That's when it comes down to, he said, let's not sugarcoat this. These are weird ideas. Days later on MSNBC, Walz reiterated the point. You know, there's something wrong with people when they talk about our freedom in your bedroom, freedom to be in your exam room, freedom to tell your kids what they can read. That stuff is weird. They come across weird. They seem obsessed with this. Other Democrats, including the Harris campaign, amplified the weird message, quickly making Walz a star on online Democrat circles. Days after Floyd's murder, when Minneapolis was burning down thanks to BLM and Antifa, Tim Walz falsely claimed that those rioting, looting, burning down stores, and even a police station were out-of-state protesters. At a May 2020 news conference, Tim Walz said he understood that the catalyst of the protest was Minneapolis' inability to deal with inadequacies, inequalities, and quite honestly, the racism that was and has been present. But we're going to start releasing who some of these people are, and they'll be able to start tracing that history of where they're at and what they're doing here and why they're on the dark web and how they're organizing this, Walz said. I think our best estimate now is about 20% of these rioters are Minnesotans, about 80% are outside agitators. Well, that quickly fell apart. Within hours, local TV station KARE reported that Minneapolis police tallies of those arrested for rioting, unlawful assembly, and burglary-related crimes during the riots from May 29th to May 30th showed that 86% of those arrested had Minnesota addresses. So he tried to blame it on outside agitators, as the Democrats always do this. Anytime you see riots taking place, whether it's in Ferguson, Missouri, or Minneapolis, or Seattle, Washington, they all claim that it's outside agitators coming in. No, it's not. Furthermore, Tim Walz allowed these rioters to burn down the city for 3 days before finally calling in the National Guard, and that was only after a heated conversation with his administration. Trump, who was president at the time, and then the mayor of Minneapolis, who begged him over and over again to do the right thing and activate the National Guard. Tim Walz, who served over 20 years in the Minnesota National Guard, is on record questioning what, if anything, the National Guard could even do if he activated them. How is it possible that you served over 20 years in the Army National Guard and don't know how they can be used in emergency situations? How? I don't care if you served 2 years and never made it past the rank of private, or in this case, 20 years as a senior NCO. How is it possible, Tim Walz, that you don't know how the National Guard can be utilized when your town and cities are burning to the ground by rioters and looters? So let's talk about facts of what Tim Walz supports. If Kamala Harris wins in November, Tim Walz is a heartbeat away from being your president. And oh, by the way, everything I'm about to read to you here that Tim Walz supports, so does Kamala Harris, whatever her fucking name is. Tim Walz supports felons allowed to vote regardless of if your felony was robbing a bank or sexually assaulting a baby on video in broad daylight in front of a children's hospital. If you're a felon, you should be allowed to vote. Tim Walz supports children in elementary, junior high, and high school having access to sexually suggested porn books. Tim Walz supports abortion up to the moment of delivery. Choice should be between you and your doctor. Just kill the baby at 9 months. Tim Walz supports children being able to have sex change operations. Tim Walz supports drag queen shows in schools and libraries. Tim Walz supports illegal immigrants having driver's license. He even signed a bill to allow it in Minnesota. Tim Walz supports sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. Tim Walz supports Black Lives Matter and Antifa, even though they burnt down some of his cities. Tim Walz supports banning what all Democrats call weapons of war, aka assault rifles, such as AR-15s and AK-47s. Tim Walz supports that all criminals, regardless of their crime, doesn't matter if it is a DUI or you raped a newborn, you should get a second chance. Tim Walz supports AOC, aka Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, New Green Deal, doing away with oil and gas and all fossil fuels for all electric vehicles and windmills. Tim Walz supports Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, the two most anti-American, Jew-hating, radical Muslims in Congress. Tim Walz supports open borders, which means he or anyone who supports open borders then must support allowing tons of drugs to flow across our country, killing Americans, especially fentanyl. MS-13 gangs and other gangs coming here to America to kill Americans. Cartel sex trafficking of women and children into America. And the worst of the worst, Tim Walz supports terrorists coming into America and patiently waiting to conduct the next 9/11 attack to kill more Americans. Come on, liberals and Democrats. Start fact-checking tonight's show. You can either say, hey, I looked it all up and you were right, or, which you won't do, by the way, or I made it all up and it's all a lie because you're too freaking stupid to do your own homework. You only want to listen to the spin of MSNBC and CNN, who are protecting Harris and Walz. Now that the Democrats have somebody that they can run that's at least awake, of course, she won't hold a press conference because she won't have a teleprompter, and she will be exposed to those that don't know shit about her. And let's be honest about this for a moment. Up until Biden dropped off and allowed her to take over and run, guess what? The average Democrat voter didn't know a damn thing about Kamala Harris. Nothing. They couldn't tell you jack shit about this woman. But then, bam, out the gate, they go running with her. Reading only off of teleprompters. Because they don't know what we know. And that is, if you take her off the teleprompter, she's a laughing hyena. And she says shit that doesn't make sense. She says things that don't add up. She talks to you like you're a third grader. And there's video after video after video of her doing this over and over and over again. I've shared them. Everybody's shared them with you. So we got a debate coming up soon. There's 3 debates with Trump and Harris. One's going to be on Fox News, one's ABC, and the other one I think is CBS or maybe NBC. But I think it's CBS. Yeah, she's going to say shit about Donald Trump's felonies. She may spread the freaking false narrative about Russia collusion. Who knows what she's supposed to say about that? You know, bottom line is, it's going to be a disaster for her. And they know this. The Democrats know this. Those that put her in this position. This is some like Stalin shit that took place here, folks. You haven't figured this out yet? Democrats, think about this. Not a one of you got the vote for her to be your candidate to go up against Donald Trump. Nobody. No. The heads that be made that decision. You didn't get a chance. They took all the delegates that went to Biden and just gave them to her without a single fucking vote being allowed. That is some Nazi Germany shit right there. How are y'all not all up in arms about that? Your voice didn't get heard. When Kamala Harris ran to be president, back the first time with Joe Biden, who was running as well, she didn't get a single delegate vote, period. Not one. And she dropped out of the race. All of a sudden, now she gets all of them because they were given to her from Joe Biden's bank and the money from his campaign. She didn't earn this. They took away your rights, Democrats, to pick who you want to be the nominee. And they just gave it to her. They do that shit in Venezuela, in Russia, in Cuba, in North Korea, in Iran. Election time's up. Oh, I'm going to have my brother run in my place, and you can't do nothing about it. Or my dad or my uncle or whoever. And the people don't get the vote. That's not how it works in America, but that's how it worked here. I used to be a Democrat, for those of you who don't know this, until I woke up one day and realized what a fucking messed up party I was following. It's gone to shit. It's not the party of JFK anymore. It's hijacked by radical left idiots. What part of this don't Democrats get? As a Republican now, I'm pissed off for the Democrats that the DNC did this and took away your right to vote on who you want to be the nominee. And you're not taking to the streets over that shit. That means that you don't give a fuck about the United States Constitution. That's what it means. You're just going to be a sheep and walk off the cliff. Well, November is right around the corner. And we got plenty of time for combat veterans like myself and combat veterans all over America to take to social media and expose the outright lies and hypocrisy of Harris and Walz. And we will do it all the way up to election. In fact, on election eve, I'll be doing a live show right here in my studio with a whole bunch of guests. I'm having a big election party and a whole bunch of people from all different walks of life will be here to come on and share their thoughts about the direction of this country. It's going to be a very interesting evening. And I hope that you'll remember that. You will tune in when we do it. There'll be other things talked about in the future before we get to it. There will be reminders about it and so forth. Anyhow, you had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me. And for that, I'm forever grateful. I thank you very, very much. Yes, there's a lot of news that I could have covered tonight. Nothing actually stood out more important, I believe, than the Tim Walz story that's happening right now. The rest of it is just static at the moment. I could talk about how crazy shit's getting with you over in Russia and Ukraine, and how Ukraine is now actually, they've not only pushed Russia out of their country, but they're now conducting combat operations in Russia against the Russian troops. You won't hear that much from those that believe that Russia is taking out Ukraine. We got Iran, once again, saber rattling how they're going to destroy everybody, take out Israel. North Korea doing the same shit about us. China and Russia teaming up together to take ships, military ships and aircraft, work together to come around our country. I mean, it's just some nut shit going on out there, folks. Trust me. It's absolutely crazy. But it's very important that we get the message out there about Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. And we keep pushing that envelope, the envelope of truth. I'm 100% against slander and defamation of character. If you are not 100% factual about the information when you're talking about somebody else, then shut the fuck up. But when you have factual information that they're a liar and you can prove it, then it should be your obligation to step up and do so. That's part of making America great again. Whatever you're going to be doing over the next coming days, please be safe. Whatever you're going to be doing this weekend, I hope that you're safe. Hope that you will continue to watch your six and remember that we're not out of the woods in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot of stuff that is happening right now on our southern border. We've got terrorists that have come across the southern border. We know that. Now we're trying to find them. They're going to attack us. They will. It's just a matter of when and where. And when it does, the blood of whoever they kill is on the hands of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Period. There's no other way of putting it. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families in our country. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless each and every one of you. And by chance, if you don't know what angel families are or blue and gold star families, look it up. Google it. You need to know because they need our support more now than ever before. Because this current administration and the ones that want to be the next administration, Harris and Walz, are pissing on the graves of the loved ones of angel families and blue and gold star families. And that is unacceptable. And it should be unacceptable to every American, regardless of political party. Thank you. God bless you. If something breaks between now and next Tuesday's show, I'll do a video about it. Other than that, I plan on hitting the boat tomorrow, getting out in the water, and spending another weekend sailing. Take care, everyone. God bless you. And I'll see you soon.